In the meantime, as people are joining us, I kind of want to go ahead and kind of give some advice as far as dog behavior goes. And one of the things that you guys probably hear a lot is that dogs mirror their owners. Or a lot of times you might hear a dog owner say, oh, you know what, the dog's a mirror of me, or my personality is affecting the dog. And I know that a lot of times people that adopt that thought or that philosophy got it from watching a lot of dog training shows. And dog training shows are notorious for saying, hey, the dog mirrors you, or you're the reason why your dog is the way they are. And for the most part, that is accurate in a sense. And for the most part, people, I think, understand that. But as I hear people say it, I really, or I'm working with clients, or our trainers are working with clients, I really start to notice they don't actually understand the true concept of what that really means, okay? So what I want to do is I want to really go over what that means about the dog being a reflection of you when you're working with your dog. And I'm going to use kind of a human example of this. So let's use a little human psychology instead of dog psychology here. And let's change this thought about the dog mirroring you to human children. When it comes to human children, your children reflect your parenting skills. Okay? Think about that. Your children are a reflection of how you raise them. That's what mirroring is. Okay, what do I mean by that? If you have stinky, dirty kids that don't shower, that's not on your kids, that's on you, because you don't enforce that they follow those rules, that they have to shower every day, or they have to brush their teeth every day. Or if you're a little bit relaxed on their toothbrushing skills, you remind them, yes, and you're the parent, and you're like, they don't listen to me, I tell them to brush their teeth every day, but they still got gooky teeth and they're still getting cavities. That still is a reflection of your parenting skills, because you have to take the time to enforce those rules. If you don't take the time, or you're not self-aware that you're not always on point with that, that is because subconsciously in some way, you are okay with it to an extent. You see what I'm saying? So I'm gonna give you an example between me and a friend of mine. My personality is generally a very calm personality. If you know me personally, you know me to be a very kind of a mellow, kind of a chill type of a guy, right? And I also have my own personal sensory processing disorders, meaning that me personally, I really hate loud noises. I really hate people that talk super loud, or I really can't stand people that overly animated whenever they're in my face and excited about a conversation or sharing a story with me. As a matter of fact, sometimes when people share stories of their past experiences, sometimes clients, whenever they share their past experiences, they give me anxiety when I can see that they're reliving the story that they're telling, and there's a lot of emotion behind the story that they're telling. It overwhelms me, it makes me uncomfortable. Now that doesn't mean that I want my clients to change how they act around me. I'm just saying that on a personal level, that affects me, and it matters to me that I'm able to control and manage the intensity and the excitability in my own environment. So what does that mean? That means that if you come to my house, you're not gonna see a lot of as a matter of fact, I own 8 dogs, which you probably are not seeing here. They're sleeping in their beds, or they're sleeping in other rooms that I have. If one of them happens to come out, then that's gonna be cool. You guys get to see one of my dogs. But generally in my home, they're all very quiet. You think that they're more cat-like than anything. But that is because whenever, just like with parents, they don't allow children to play in the house or throw balls in the house. You know, you kids need to take that outside. I don't really allow my dogs to play in my house. If I notice that my dogs have a lot of excitability, I will go out and exercise with them. Or we have an outdoor enclosure. We go out and we let them run and we let them play. Or we do some activities with them. But when they're in the house, my house is not a playground, and I don't tolerate that. Now, does that mean that you yourself should not allow dogs to play in your house either? And no, I'm not saying that. That's what I'm showing you is that is a reflection on what's acceptable to you compared to what's acceptable to me. And so when you start to realize what you're willing to put up with, what you're willing to accept, that's when you start noticing how your dogs adapt themselves to your particular personality and living style. And it may not bother you at that point, but once it escalates, then you take notice of it. And once you take notice of it, it's because now it's reached a point where it's frustrating you. Then you decide that you want to do something about it. And once you decide to address it, you're going to have success. Your dogs will be receptive to, oh my gosh, she's got some boundaries and rules that she's enforcing right now. And then what will happen is you will start to get relaxed because you have a certain expectation that is okay for you. And then they'll meet that expectation, kind of teetering that line, that borderline between what you expect and what you don't allow. And then you'll find that they'll keep teeter-tottering that line. And you have to understand that that's because your children are a reflection of what you allow, right? A lot of our clients, their success in their training or their rehabilitation is different amongst each other. I've had some clients say, oh my gosh, Barbara's dog, who has the same behavior my dog does, is doing freaking amazing, and I'm not there yet. What is she doing, or what level of training is she at that I'm not there yet? And you have to understand, it's not always the training method. It's not always which trainer they're deciding to work with. A lot of it has to do with the owner's personality, what their expectations are, and what is acceptable to them. Me, I don't allow my dogs to play in the house. I also have sensory processing disorder, and I don't like a lot of barking. So at my house, you'll find that if somebody rings the doorbell, and you'll probably be amazed at this, but when someone rings the doorbell, my dogs don't make a peep. They don't make any noise. They just look at me and go, are you gonna get that door, or what should we do? They totally are calm whenever anybody knocks or rings my doorbell. But that's because from a very younger age, I addressed it right away. It was never acceptable to me to have any kind of intensity or overexcitability in my home. And so I have to have really calm, chill dogs. They're pretty much like service dogs all the time. I can take them with me anywhere. They know what to expect in certain environments, and they know what I expect of them in those certain environments. Are my dogs mirroring my personality? Are they a reflection of my energy? Not in a spiritual sense, but they are a reflection of how I maintain my house, how I maintain my household, and what I will and will not tolerate. So you might find that if you tend to like to play in your house with your dogs, or you create excitement in your house, or you allow when your husband comes home that it's okay for your dogs to run up and jump all over him to greet him and say hello, you're not gonna have the same type of dogs that I personally would have. It doesn't mean that you're not capable of having obedient dogs as mine are, but you have to understand it's really directly what you subconsciously are okay and accept. Okay, so that is really what I mean by dogs reflecting their owners. It's not you're nervous. It's not you're intense. It's not I'm overexcited so my dog is feeding off my energy. It has more to do with what you tend to allow or what you may not be observant of until it's too late, because you're allowing little steps to happen because subconsciously those little steps that your dog's doing that's progressing is acceptable for you. Otherwise you would have addressed it if it bothered you right away. But it doesn't bother you until it reaches a certain point, then all of a sudden it demands your attention and then you get frustrated. I don't allow it to ever get to that point because my expectations are much higher where I address it the minute it bothers me. And I guess you could say it's kind of an OCD, but I really control and manage my environment all the time. I'm not saying that everybody can do what I do. Sometimes my wife tells me that I have to let up a little bit because she even sometimes will have the TV too loud, and I'll be sitting there going, oh my gosh, that TV's way too loud. Is there any way we can lower it down to like a 20 or a 15? And then she'll look at me and realize, why is that bothering you so much? It just does. It's kind of an OCD that I have. And I guess it's a little bit about why I have that gift that I have, where I can generally go to a very intense, frustrated, fearful, or even an excited animal, and I can generally take that animal and calm it down, start to vibe with me, and I can have that animal with me and separate ourselves from whatever the environment is doing, so that dog and me we're within our own bubble, and that dog feels calmer with me because it realizes what my expectations are, and it realizes that I'm going to control and manage my environment so that doesn't come near us, or it doesn't affect what we have going on right here. So you're gonna have to realize what your own lifestyle is, most important what your own personality is, as far as what you expect from your animal. And if you want a calm, relaxed dog all the time that's not easily triggered by intensity or excitement, you're really gonna have to self-reflect on what it's more self-awareness, I guess, of what you're not observing that you do. That you're not looking at the whole of how you live your life, and what you tend to accept, and what you know what's acceptable for you and what's absolutely not acceptable for you. You're gonna have to raise that bar a little bit higher and start realizing that it may bother you that your dog's getting excited in the house, but it should have bothered you much earlier. When your dog wasn't excited, he was just pacing and not relaxing. So a lot of times dogs will just pace back and forth. They're bored, they don't know what to do, they're anxious. It may not bother you at that point, but it'll get to a point where it will get your attention. But you need to be more self-aware of, my dog's pacing quite a bit. I should probably address that now, before it actually ends up, bothering you. So that's...
Please check your email.
What that means about a dog reflecting. So again, dogs are a reflection of their owners. Think of it more as children reflect their parents as far as their parenting goes, right? What's acceptable to parents, what they allow their kids to do, what they allow their kids not to do. Some parents let their kids cuss. There's a lot of parents out there that actually do let their kids cuss. Now, does that mean that the kids are reflecting the energy of their parents? No, but they are reflecting what their parents tend to allow, or maybe are unaware that they're not watching how they behave around their children. And so their children just adopt that kind of a lifestyle. It's probably not a problem for those parents until the school calls, or until another parent says, your children can't stay the night or play with my children because of their potty mouth. And then the parents get super frustrated because their attention has been brought to it, and then that's when it bothers them, when it should have bothered them a long time ago, right? So that's a little bit about that. One of the other things I want to talk about a little bit as well is a little bit more about relationship-based training when it comes to working with dogs. And a lot of you probably already know Cesar Millan's mantra of exercise, discipline, and affection. That's another thing on television that people have heard. They understand it to an extent, but they don't really, they're not really absorbing it the way it should be absorbed, right? So I want to go over that a little bit, and then I also want to address some questions that some people had under the comments that they wanted some answers to. But let's go over the exercise, discipline, and affection. Okay, remember that when you're doing relationship-based training, I'm not talking about dog training. I never claimed to be a dog trainer, and I never really encourage my students or the trainers that work with our company to claim that they train dogs. It is really more of a coaching to the owners on how to control and manage their dogs better, and as well as their environment. And it's less about training than it is about communicating effectively with the dog. So I don't train dogs, but I can communicate with them effectively, and I can understand the communication back. And in order to do that, you have to have a proper relationship with the dog, very similar that you would have with your husband or your spouse or your children. And when you have this kind of a relationship with your spouse or your children, you have to understand that in order for a relationship to work, especially a romantic relationship that maybe you're involved in, you have to meet each other's physical, psychological, and emotional needs. The minute you're not meeting your partner's physical needs, the minute you're not meeting your partner's emotional needs when they need help, or you're not recognizing that they're upset or something's bothering them, the minute you're not meeting their psychological needs, what will happen is there will be tension in your relationship, and there will be frustration and a lack of communication. Then behavioral issues will happen within your relationship that you may not be able to point your finger at. That's when marriage and family therapy comes in, right? And that's where all of a sudden you guys try to avoid each other in the house, or your children don't come to you and communicate freely because they're afraid of being judged, ridiculed, or even punished, right? So you have to make sure that, like in a human relationship where you got to meet your spouse's or your children's physical, emotional, and psychological needs, you have to understand that dogs also have the mental equivalency, or they process emotions very similarly to a 4 or 5-year-old. And if that's the case, you need to make sure that you're meeting your dog's emotional, physical, and psychological needs, especially during a quarantine when they're cooped up in the house. So what does that mean? That's where Cesar Millan's formula for a balanced dog comes in. But he doesn't call it physical, psychological, or emotional needs. He calls it exercise, discipline, and affection, which people tend to misunderstand, or they don't comprehend it the way it probably should be. So exercise, that is your spouse's physical needs, right? Exercise with a dog is very, very important. During this epidemic, even playing in the backyard is going to be beneficial to meeting your dog's physical needs. Playing with a chuck it in your backyard, or creating what's called a flirt pole. If you guys don't know what a flirt pole is, it's basically a stick or a dowel that you can get at Home Depot. You tie like a rope or a string on it. You tie a tennis ball at the end, and you kind of entice the dog. It's like a cat toy, but it's for a dog. And you can swing it around, they can chase it. This is a great way of meeting a dog's physical needs, right? So we got exercise. Discipline is what's probably the most misunderstood part of Cesar Millan's mantra. Because as soon as you say discipline, people think right off the bat, correction or punishment. And that is not at all what discipline means in that mantra. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example. So I, at one point, was going to a gym. I haven't been anywhere, which is the reason why I'm chubby. But I have been going to a gym. And one of the things that I noticed was that there was this gentleman. I don't believe he was going for the same reasons I was, because, I don't know, for some reason he was just letting off steam, or he's going to the gym, but he didn't really seem like he was trying to get in shape more than he was. I don't know what he was there for, but he was taking his weights and swinging them over his shoulders like a gorilla, screaming his reps out loud, yelling at himself, slapping himself, taking his shirt off, posing in the pictures, posting on his Instagram. I mean, the guy was probably bigger than I was, not very muscular, and when I was there for a month, I was already starting to drop some weight and getting a little definition, and this guy actually looked bigger before he even started. It didn't seem like he was working out effectively, although he was throwing some huge weights around, way more than what I was lifting. But he was just a gorilla, right? Just swinging them around, and yelling his reps. Later on, I hadn't seen him very often, and I was talking to one of the personal fitness instructors that was in that gym, and I said, "Hey, whatever happened to that one dude? I mean, he was coming religiously, like every day." And he goes, "Oh no, he still comes, but he's under a curriculum now. He's decided to hire a personal coach." And I thought, "Oh, okay, well that makes a lot of sense." And he goes, "Yeah, he really needed one, because number one, I had to teach him that the mirror was not for selfies and flexing your muscles. The mirror is supposed to be checking your form whenever you're lifting weights to make sure that you're in check and that you're creating ultimate resistance, and that you're not, cheating whenever you're lifting the weights." And then I said, oh, that's pretty cool. So also he was telling me that that gentleman couldn't actually even finish 10 reps without swinging his weight around, which was super bad for his back and his joints, by the way. That when he was doing proper form, he really could actually not even finish his sets like he did normally once he had his proper form down. Then later on, I never really saw that guy return, and I brought him up again with that same fitness instructor, and I said, hey, so is that guy still doing private sessions? Because I was thinking about maybe doing some private coaching myself. And he goes, oh, no, he totally dropped out. He's not doing it. He doesn't even go to this gym anymore. And I was like, whoa, well, is he not seeing any improvements? And he goes, no, he just mentally couldn't handle it. What does mentally have anything to do with lifting weights? Well, actually what happened was it wasn't just physical exercise anymore when you bring mental discipline into it. When you bring mental discipline into it and realize that you have to now focus on your form, you have a game plan of how long you're going to spend on a certain exercise. Then on top of that game plan, you need to create a checklist of what you've been eating through the day, how many calories you're burning, and start to create a diet plan. That's where discipline comes in. Exercise, discipline. And that becomes mentally draining. And so when you combine exercise with structure, is what really Cesar Millan should call it, it creates a dog that has his physical needs met, but also has his mental needs met, his psychological needs met. And that is really what that formula should be saying. Exercise, discipline doesn't mean punishing or correction. It is structure, which is super, super important to not just drain a dog physically, but also mentally. Then comes affection. And when it comes to affection, that is a whole lesson in itself that we'll probably go later on in depth with as far as the future webinars go. And the reason why is because that's another thing that a lot of trainers, including Cesar Millan, including maybe every dog training show you've ever seen, doesn't cover how important affection is during training. Because they don't realize that it's not just about reinforcing a behavior. Because when people think, oh, sharing affection, they think of it as positive reinforcement where you're only using affection to reinforce a behavior. But you're not using affection to meet a dog's needs. But you have to know what kind of affection to share. So one of the things that we'll probably talk about in our future live feed, and I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this book before called The 5 Love Languages. And Alexa will probably have to help me with the 5 love languages. But the 5 love languages are touch, quality time, acts of service. There's 2 more. Do you remember what the other 2 are? No. Words of affirmation is one of them. And I forget the last one. What was that? Yeah, but we'll go over it. Alexa's just sitting right next to me. So if you don't know what those are, it was a psychologist, his last name was Chapman, and he realized that a lot of times when couples start to grow apart, they don't realize that they have different love languages and they're not being met. I'll give you an example. A woman may not be into PDA, public displays of affection. She may not like that her husband likes to hug her. She may not like that her husband kisses her. That might hurt the husband's feelings, right? How else is he supposed to show that he appreciates her, that he loves her? Well, it's not so much that she doesn't believe that he doesn't love her, but for her, as a child growing up, her love language is acts of service, meaning that she witnessed her father always putting food on the table, making sure she always had school clothes, making sure he kept up on whether her grades were good or not, made sure that if the economy was going down, he'd pick up a second job, making sure he was constantly making sure that his wife's car was current on oil, or there was always a full tank of gas in the vehicle, or that they always had a good running vehicle. And to her, that represented love, caring for your family, meeting those needs. So when it comes to that woman growing up, that girl growing up as a woman, she may not be attracted to a guy that's hanging on her, kissing her, holding her, buying her flowers. She may be much more attracted to the guy that says, hey, I notice your gas tank's a quarter low, it's full. Hey, when's the last time we had that oil change in your car? I need to get that done. We need to do that before you go to work next. Or, hey, I'm noticing that the fridge is running low. Here's the card in case you can get some groceries before coming home the next day. And to some people, they're super attracted to that guy, right? But to the guy that's trying to share the PDA, the public displays of affection, in his family, maybe his father was very huggy. Maybe he came from a Latino family. The mom was always constantly hugging and kissing the kids. And to him, that represents an emotional attachment. That to him represents love. So although they both love each other, they're not meeting each other's love languages. And when you're dealing with a dog, how do you share affection with a dog? Because to dogs, they also have different love languages, and it's up to you to figure out what it is. People are so quick to pet their dog, not realizing that that's not your dog's love language. You think every single dog in the world wants to be pet. I'm telling you with 100% honesty, and I've been working with behavioral cases, I think I'm going on 25 years now. You don't know how many times I've seen dogs that don't like it when their owners touch them. I see the owners kissing them, loving them, petting them, and every time I see the dog go, oh, jeez, God, when is it gonna stop? And then the owner stops and the dog starts panting again. Oh, wow. The dog, for the most part, just tolerates it. And they don't know why the dog doesn't listen to them, or why the dog doesn't feel close to them, or why the dog doesn't look like it wants to have any affection, or avoids them at all costs. It doesn't even go in bed with them. It's because they're not recognizing what their dog's love language is. And then I'll come in and then realize, okay, let's start working and exercising with this dog and meeting all its physical, psychological, emotional needs. And then as I'm hitting all these needs, I'm realizing, wow, this dog really loves me a lot. And then the client goes, wow, our dog loves you. It knows when you're coming for lessons. When it sees you, it gets super excited. I've never seen my dog love anybody that much in their whole life. Why doesn't my dog love me that way? Why is he loving you this way? The reason why is because I'm spending quality time with the dog. I may not be living with you, and you may only see me once a week, but the once a week that you see me, I'm spending that hour quality time working with the dog, and we're going outside, walking up and down the sidewalk, doing our training drills. To that dog, that's quality time, and that means everything to that dog. And you weren't doing that love language. Because you weren't missing that love language for that dog, you're not sharing the right type of affection for that specific dog. For some dogs, physical exercise. They don't care about hugging and petting. They don't care about quality time. But start jogging with them or going on a hike with them, and they love you. And they create this association with you that that's what you represent to them, is adventure and excitement and going out. And then all of a sudden, your wife may say, why does the dog love you more than me? Because you're the only one going out on adventures with the dog, right? Families that play together stay together. So you also have to realize that it's about knowing what the love language of your dog is. And we will go over that on for some future live feeds. So exercise, discipline, and affection. Now you guys know a better understanding of what that actually means and what you should be doing during this epidemic, and what it exactly means when trainers say that the dog's just mirroring the owner. It's not that it's not a hokey spiritual thing that the dog can sense your energy. Think of it more as children are a reflection of what their parents tolerate or what their parents allow in their household.